got to apologize, and nobody likes that. It's first, let me ask you a question, just for your consideration. How often should someone be allowed to tell their second favorite love story? I mean, love stories, they got to be told and retold and told and retold. But how often should someone be allowed to tell their second favorite love story? My first favorite, of course, involves Melanie. But my second favorite, how often can I get away with telling you that story? Here's my apology. It's been 7 years since I've told it to you. You can't go 7 years without telling your favorite love story. My apologies. I'm going to tell it to you today. We're going to end with it today. It occurred to me that on a campus like this, we've got to at least tell it every year or two, every other year. Maybe we can get away with more. All right, coming at the end. But the love story I am going to tell you to start with is a love story gone strategy story. A young man, what was his wedding date was April 6, 2020. So just 2 years ago, this week, he had his wedding date, young, beautiful bride there on the island. They'd set the date. He worked for a bank, and Taiwan is one of the few places in the world that mandates companies to give you paid wedding time, meaning after you get married, they call it marriage time, after you get married, you have 8 paid days. Yeah, amen. Well, this young man worked for a bank, and April 6th was rolling around, and they began to plan their honeymoon, and 8 days just didn't seem like enough. So what do? Well, here's what they did. On April 6, 2020, this young bank employee married his bride. On April 16, and the catch is this. He consulted with his employer, and they said, you don't have to take them the day after you get married. You can accommodate the time when you let us know when you want to take the time. So April 6, he gets married. April 16, he gets divorced. On April 17, he gets married again to the same bride. On April 28, divorced. On April 29, married again to the same bride. May 11, divorced. May 12, married for the 4th time to the same person. And then he shows up to his boss and says, sir, I will need 32 days of paid leave. Boss man didn't like that. Went to the Labor Department, Taiwanese government. They said, oops, let's review the books. There is not. He is allowed 8 days for every one of those. But the Taiwanese government said, by the way, we will be changing that little loophole, so don't try it anymore. However, our young friend and his bride got all 32 days of paid leave. I applaud the man. I wish I was smart enough to have figured that kind of stuff out. But really, is marriage, is relationships, is this really something just to play with, just to strategize and see what you can get out of it? No, of course not. Of course not. Grab your Bibles. We're going back to the first book of the Bible, Genesis, where we started last week. This is a 2-part series. It's just all spring. We're just two-part family drift. This week, last week, this week. Next week is the cantata, and then after that, we've got 2 weeks of serpentine series, a prophecy tale of a serpentine prophecy tale, and then we finish that up. May we go into another 3-part series. So it's just we're flying through this spring. Before you know it, our seniors are going to be in robes and marching down the aisle, and we won't miss them a bit. We will miss them a lot. Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26. This is where we started. This is where the conversation starts in the very first chapter of the Bible. It's that important that it's not relegated to a chapter down the road a bit. It is included in the very first chapter. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, repetition, so that they may rule. And we talked about this was a regal invitation. You can tune in to last week. This is a regal invitation. This is royalty. God is saying, we want mankind in our own image, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He is going to take on our image, and he's going to be given part of our responsibility. He will rule over this new creation. This was an incredible exchange or endowment of authority from God to mankind. Well, verse 27 picks up. So God did create mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Catch the repetition. It is not on accident. Every word is valuable here, but in the image of God, male and female, he created them. The image of God is brought together in the diversity and the union, the covenant union of two genders, man and woman. I didn't make it up. I didn't prescribe it. In a world like we are today, this isn't even popular. But there it is, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 27. Now, I want to draw your attention to, there is, you have no argument with me, the very possibility that the devil has, through fallenness, gotten his impact on the epigenetics of mankind. We aren't what we were. We aren't physically or spiritually or emotionally or mentally. We aren't what we were created to be. Fair enough. Your point is valid. Could it be that he's also impacted that point of gender? Yes, absolutely. Fair enough. God created it in a perfect world, and since then Satan has done his best to strangle those epigenetics, to twist them. So is it still that perfect? Could there be someone that says, wait a minute, this isn't it for me? This is sure, it's possible. But I believe the Bible wouldn't lay this out as an invitation to mock us. It's an actual invitation to say, God says, I can still make this possible. My protest back to your protest is this. Sure, the devil can mess with epigenetics, who we are, who our offspring become. But could it be also that we are, as it were, Play-Doh? We reflect the image that we are exposed to. By the way, we were made out of clay. Could it be that was less illustrative of what we are? We are image bearers, but we're image bearers of whatever we are pressed up against, whatever we are exposed to, that we bear the image of. And so I protest back to you to say, wait a minute, the confusion may not be as confusing as it seems if we would clear the air of all that is confusing us. That is the entertainment industry that is bent on confusing this question. You say, I'm not confused about it at all. It's clear to me. I've spent my time on TikTok. Exactly. Prove my point. We are the image of something, and I'm going to put that line on the screen. We will bear the image or reflection of something. That's how we were made to be. We were made to reflect the image of God, but Satan has said, I hate that image, and I will do my best to get them to bear another image. And so I'm going to inundate them with confusion and perversion. I'm going to get them to reflect another image. And here's the position we take. Oh, how terrible it is. We take the position that we are a kind of a third-party observer to the chaos. No, I'm a neutral. I am capable. I'm a third-party observer. I can see what's going on there, and I can choose for myself. My perspective is rather valuable. Thank you very much. How narcissistic. Matter of fact, I think that's probably the most narcissistic position you could take, that you are exempt from the confusion, and in fact, and instead you are some third-party observer with a perspective that is clear and fair and reliable. Who do you think you are? Who do I think I am? To say, no, I can figure it out. Yeah, I can see things, okay, and I'm good. We put ourselves in a neutral no man's zone, which is really just narcissism. I'm the best perspective for me. That doesn't exist. There is no third party neutral no man's zone. That doesn't exist. You will either bear the image of one or bear the image of the other. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 24. That is, speaking of bringing Adam and Eve together, this first union between a man and a woman. Verse 24, that is why a man leaves his father and his mother and is united with his wife, and they become one flesh. This is packed full. It's interesting that this is happening in the context where there is no father and the mother. That Adam and Eve don't have a father and a mother in that sense. But from the very beginning, even before there's a father and mother, this is prescriptive, this is determinative, this is prophetic. This is the established way before it is even has the chance to be that way. They don't even have a father and a mother to leave, but it is being prescribed. This is what will be determined for the rest of mankind's existence, as it were. It predates its context. And then it uses this term, united. It's a covenant term. It's an expression of covenant. A man will leave his father and his mother. That's pretty important language. In antiquity, and in many cultures, loyalty to your parents, of course, is held in the highest regard. You don't forsake your parents for anything. It's an undying commitment. Ooh, undying, that's a good word. You don't break that covenant of loyalty until they die. That's it. You don't forsake your parents. But it's playing off of that loyalty, that commitment to your parents. It now becomes an undying loyalty and covenant or commitment with your spouse. That's the context. It's a covenant. It's a commitment of one leaving, one commitment, and taking that same loyalty and attaching it to somebody else. You are now, I am loyal to you for the rest of life. That's the invitation. Well, Genesis 1 and 2. That's the paradigm. That's the determinative that's set up. Now, what do we go to the New Testament? Let's go to the New Testament, Matthew chapter 19. You got Matthew 19 in your Bible? Of course. It's red letter edition. It's going to have it in red letters. Matthew 19, some Pharisees, some rabbis came to Jesus to test him. And they asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Is it lawful? There was two schools in the two rabbinic schools, two thoughts, as it were. One was the Hillel, and that was you could divorce your wife for anything. And there was that rabbinic school, and then there was the Shammai, and they argued, no, you can't divorce except for adultery. Adultery is the only reason. And so these two schools of rabbinic thought, the rabbis loved to discuss things. They were not a whole lot different than we are today. We love to discuss things. They weren't real active, but they discussed and debated. And if they called a committee to discuss a hot topic of the day, all the rabbis would come. But if it was community service, nobody would come. Right? It's very similar. All right, back to the rabbis. I don't know where you guys were going. Back to the rabbis. So the Hillel and the Shammais, they argued about this all the time. And so these rabbis said, hey, let's get this new young whippersnapper on the block. Let's see what he says about this. Hey, Jesus, what does it say? He doesn't go for the debate. He's not interested in debate. In fact, what does he say? He says, haven't you read? Haven't you studied the Bible? I mean, Let the Bible solve it. In verse 4, haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator, capital C, Creator God, made them male and female and said, for this reason a man will leave his father. He's quoting Genesis chapter 2, right? For this reason a man will leave his father and his mother and be united with his wife, and the two will become one flesh, so that they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no man put separate. That's the NIV. Of course, the King James is, let no man put asunder. And we've all heard that. Melanie always asks me, why don't you say that at people's weddings? Why don't you make that? I don't know. I don't like it. I mean, I like the idea behind it, but there's just something about the way it rings that makes it's like nails on a chalkboard. Let no man put asunder. All right, so I've never said it in a wedding. But I should. So this is Jesus' response to this rabbinic controversy. Hey, guys, go back to creation. That's the way this is determined. Remember, the Genesis account was prescriptive. It wasn't descriptive. Descriptive is what describes what is happening. You can describe what is happening or what is tradition, or you can prescribe, that is, determine what something should be. Not what you currently have, but what you should be. And that's what Jesus is saying Genesis was. It was prescriptive. That's what it's supposed to be. It's a covenant. The two become one. They leave their father and their mother. That loyalty to parents now becomes a loyalty to each other, an undying loyalty. In their context, everyone knew. There was a little bit of probably a gasp. Oh yes, leave your father and your mother? This is serious, because that was the paramount of all relationships, of all commitments, of all loyalties. It was to your parents. And Jesus says you take that and you apply it to your spouse. Whew. And then just a little note here. It's very clear Jesus is saying, and the two, he repeats that, and the two become one. Two become one. A question that's often asked is, hey, why did all of these Bible writers get away with, why did all these Bible heroes get away with polygamy? I mean, they just, by the way, it's almost always polygamy that is the man having multiple wives, and not polyandry, which is the woman having multiple husbands. That women are smarter than that. They're like, no, don't have more than one. It's the guys that are not smart enough to figure that out. And then you have like the quintessential husband with 700 wives, Mr. Solomon, and that was his downfall, of course. But here Jesus is describing what is prescriptive. He's not describing what has actually happened. He's not saying, oh yeah, I understand that there's only two people that have entered into this covenant. You know, he knows that they have diverged from that, but he's saying from creation it was only meant to be two people coming together in a relationship, a covenant, a loyal covenant. And Jesus uses the covenant language just like Moses did in the book of Genesis. This is covenant conversation. Why? We'll find out in just a minute with Paul. He'll quote Genesis, and we'll find out why it's such powerful and deep theological language. But Jesus continues, the question is pressed back. Why then, verse 7, why then did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate and divorce her and send her away? Why? Why did he get away with that? Jesus replied, well, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. You want to know why? Your hearts were hard. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. But it was not this way from the beginning. That's not how it was meant to be. I tell you that anyone, verse 9, who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality. Now this is key because we're coming back to this in just a minute. Sexual immorality, and marries another woman, he commits adultery. You can't divorce and remarry. It's just, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Now, does it happen? Yes, but it happens because of the hardness of your hearts. All right, so let's talk about those two operative phrases in this passage, hardness of your hearts. What is hardness of your hearts? The Bible uses that a ton, especially with the Israelites leaving Egypt, hardness of your hearts. What does that mean? It really means you're narcissistic. That's what it means. It means you are unwilling to acknowledge the sovereignty of God. You are unwilling to acknowledge that God knows more than you know, the sovereignty of God. And so it's this narcissism that says, no, I do have the best perspective. I know what's best for me. And that's why they were this hardness of their hearts, or even Pharaoh, and his heart was hard. No, I do know what's best. Everybody around Pharaoh was going, look, Pharaoh, we are getting taken out by all of these plagues. We got to do something. No, and he would harden his heart. I do know what's best. I've got a plan. My perspective is the best. Hardness of hearts is narcissism. And so Jesus says, Moses did this to meet you because of your narcissism. He met you, he had to compromise this. For all the accusations that God is unbending, unmerciful, and that he's harsh, this just throws it out the window. Here is God that meets people part way. He doesn't get his preferred way, but he meets them there and he works with them. And he makes heroes, Bible heroes, out of people that had hard hearts, that would not give up on some of these areas. So the devil is going, hey, no, God is unbending, he's harsh, he's unwilling to work with us. He'll just slap you up if you make a mistake. That's not at all what God. Jesus is saying, look, God had to make a game plan based on your hard hearts. He still wanted to work with you because he's covenanted with you. We're going to find out in a minute. God has made the same covenant that he's asking you to make with each other. He's already made with you. And that means he's undying. He is attached to you. What's the second line here? Sexual immorality. That's porneia. That's the Greek word porneia. And we get our English word pornography from it. And so we say, oh, this is about pornography. Yes and no. The Greek word porneia is any diversion from the original plan. Any diversion. It literally includes, this is not a problem in our context, but it currently includes, porneia, the Greek expression includes deviation in sexuality, experimenting with other creation, non-human creation. Trying to be as sensitive as I can to that. But it includes multiple spouses. It includes adultery. It includes, I'm going to tell you, for the Greek expression, it includes homosexuality. Any deviation from Genesis is what porneia includes. And it is consistent. These are Bible scholars going, hey, we can't change that. Jesus is saying, hey, wait a minute. When there is sexual deviation, when there's deviation, and it is immorality. That's what he's calling it. He's saying it's not according to the plan. Now, can God work through it? Incredible how God works through our fallenness. But he's saying, wait a minute, this deviation, this immorality, it's a big deal. What was the only other reason you were supposed to break this covenant? Death do us part, right? That's how we say it, for richer or for poor, till death do us part. That's the covenant. Better or worse, sickness and in health. That's the vows. Till death do us part. And that's what Jesus is saying. This covenant between spouses is supposed to be until death do you part. Or porneia. What's Jesus' point? Porneia brings death. Same thing, he says. The covenant is broken because of porneia or death. They're the same thing. This is what Jesus is laying out with. It's dangerous stuff, beloved. The world around us wants to confuse us and say, no, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. You can take it or leave it. You can have it this way or that way or your way. Any way works. Jesus said, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. I'm not making this stuff up, beloved. I'd love to tell you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just go with the flow. But I can't. My obligation, my responsibility to you as a preacher of the gospel, as a preacher of the Bible, is to tell you what the Bible says. That's it. All right, did anything change after Jesus was here? We have creation, then we have Jesus, and then what happens after Jesus leaves? Well, let's go to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5 is right there in the gospel letters. It's back there next to Philippians. You just come back a few pages. Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 30. The whole chapter is wrestling with the Christian household, what it means to honor God in your home. It gets down to the very end of the chapter, and verse 31. Let me put verse 31 on the screen for you here. It says, for this reason, that we are families, that God has called for families and marriage. For this reason, a man will leave his father and his mother. And he's quoting Genesis. He's quoting what Jesus quoted. For this man, a man will leave his father and his mother and be united with his wife, and the two will become one flesh. There it is again. It's in creation. It's in the time of Jesus. It's post-creation. This is a span of over 4,000 years where this is unchanged according to the biblical perspective. It's thousands of years. This is the way the Bible and God himself, the Creator, capital C, is saying to us, this is the way it should work. Interesting to note. Just read verse 32. I'll put it on the screen for you. Verse 32. And then Paul continues, and this is a profound mystery. This whole covenant between a man and a woman is a profound mystery because I'm also speaking about Christ and the church. This is the theological significance. The marriage between a man and a woman is symbolic of God's commitment to the church. That's where he said, I'm committed to you as a people. I'm not going away. If I was God's consultant, I would tell him, hey, don't tie yourself to us. We're like a sinking ship. But he said, I've tied myself to you, and I have an undying, that means either we die or God dies, undying commitment to you. I'm not letting you go. There's nothing you can do to shake me. Hardness of heart, your narcissism, your confusion, yep, I'm still there with you. I'm still covenanted with you. I'm not letting you go. That's why the devil hates this, because this covenant between a man and a woman, leaving that loyalty to each other, is the same loyalty that God has covenanted with us. And Satan hates that image of God. The great Jewish scholar, Abraham Joshua Heschel, wrote in his book, God in Search of Man. Fantastic volume. I've used it over and over. You've heard from it, no doubt. He writes, the idea that Israel, that is the community of God, was the consort or the spouse of God is one of the boldest statements in religious literature. We're not talking about Christian literature. We're talking about religious literature across the span of time and culture. No other religion has ever said that God is committed to the people in a faithful, undying covenant. No. The rest of the religions through time has been, if you appease the gods, there's a commitment. If you don't, then gods become angry and they separate themselves from you. And we take this pagan view of God, of the gods, and apply it to our God. It doesn't fit. He is committed to us. Amen. That's why it's so valuable. And over in Paul's writings and in Peter's writings, they keep hitting this family, this paradigm. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, 1 Peter chapter 3, 1 Timothy chapter 2. And 1 Timothy chapter 2 can sometimes be misunderstood. Some have applied it. No, that's how it should happen outside the home or in the church. But no, every one of these are using the same words and the same phrases borrowed from the Garden of Eden. This is all about family and covenants. I'm going to take a minute, and then I'm going to tell you my favorite love story, my second favorite love story. I'm going to tell you my second favorite love story. But first, I want to talk about masculinity, femininity. Those are words that will get you in hot water faster than anything else. So bear with me. I think it's appropriate we touch on them before we wrap it up. But I know it's sensitive. You can't, male and female genders, masculinity, femininity, it's confused. These terms have been used, abused, and are confusing. It's as linguists, they call it linguistic theft, when words are robbed from their original meaning and their security, and they're used in such a way that nobody knows what they mean, and they're offensive to some, and it's confusing for all. When we talk about masculinity and femininity, we're not talking about who are the leaders. Anybody God can call to be a leader, or to be strong, or to be successful, or to be brave. We're not talking about, masculine, those are the, Tim the Tool Man, huh? That's not what we're talking about. I spent a whole afternoon, about 4 hours this week, just sitting at my desk reading. It was the desk at the library, but reading books on masculinity and femininity, on gender, blogs and articles. Read books like The Men We Need by Brent Hansen, and I'm going to talk about him in a minute. The Mark of a Man by Elizabeth Elliot. Don't agree with everything these authors say, but these are some powerful, powerful work on these subjects. So if you're looking for material, The Men We Need by Hansen, The Mark of a Man by Elliot, Let Me Be a Woman by Elizabeth Elliot, Mama Bear Apologetics. I had never heard of that book. Just heard of it recently, picked it up, Mama Bear Apologetics. The subtitle for that book, Mama Bear Apologetics, is Empowering Your Kids to Challenge Cultural Lies. And it's all about not being pressed into the image of culture. You may say, I'm being myself, and everybody around you is looking, no, you're kind of reflecting what you saw on TikTok, actually. That's kind of what you saw. That's what you're becoming. That book, Mama Bear Apologetics, is edited. It's got several contributors, but it's edited by Hilary Farrer, I believe. But let's talk about what do we mean by masculine? And if we're not talking about, what are we talking about? Three things. And these, I compiled these. I brought everything that I could read on biblical gender and masculinity and femininity, and I just put it together in a list. And then I looked for the common, hey, what is that author saying? What is this author saying? And where do they agree? And I narrowed it down to three things that every author I could read on, every commentator, every biblical scholar addressing this subject. And some of these are pretty bright minds, but I just took their material and compiled it down to three for each one of these. Masculine. Number one, it's demonstrated in humility. Humility. Justin Bauer, a freelance author, I don't know him beyond a little bit that he wrote and blogged about, but he said it so well that I took the other quotes that I had out that I had from maybe more known authors and I took them out and put this guy. I just said, man, this guy just said it well. Humility, that's what it means to be a man. Humility. Justin Bauer put his words on the screen. According to the Bible and by the example of Jesus, masculinity is humble leadership. Humble leadership. It is sacrificial love and incredible meekness. And I like those last two words, incredible meekness. It's not being the man, it's being meek. Saying every day I'm going to wake up with the attitude of a servant. I want to serve those around me. Tell me how I can take care of you. Coincidentally, that's the second aspect of being a man. You're a provider. You're a caregiver. You know the term animal husbandry? It's what somebody does when they take care of animals. It can be any kind of animals. But animal husbandry means that they are caring for those animals day by day. That's what the term, husband, a man. You are the care, the one every day you're waking up, not with the question of how do I have my way, how do I get my say, but how can I serve those around me? How can I care for them? How can I provide for them? Third and final that we'll touch, and these are not exhaustive, but these are kind of common areas that bright minds have put together. The third one would be as a man, you're a protector. You make people around you safe. I had not known about this before, but in my reading, I came across a poster that some of the old-timers among us may recognize, and maybe some of you younger people. It's the l'enfant. That's the English. La femme is the French expression. This is one of the best-selling posters of all times. The l'enfant. Apparently, in some few decades ago, you could go into a college dormitory, a women's dormitory, and you could go room to room to room, and about 3 out of 4 rooms would have this poster on their wall. You're thinking, you're kind of googly-eyed with this guy, his arms and chest. Well, he's a good-looking guy. They surveyed women. Why was this one of the most bought posters in its day? Why was it one of the most popular posters in its day? And women in the survey concluded, the guy is okay. Más o menos. He's not too bad. But the reason women bought the poster was the way the baby looked at him. What did they say? Just across the board, women said, we bought it because there's a sense of security, of safety, of confidence from this infant looking back up at this man. I'm safe with you. And that's how they bought it, because the man they're looking for is someone that they're safe with. It's not just a physical safety. It's not like home security, ADT, or airbags in your car safety. Emotionally and spiritually and mentally, they are safe. That's what the world is looking for in a man. Make us safe. And in fact, I told you about Brent Hansen, who wrote the book, The Men We Need. His assistant, Sherry was her name, said she when she met Brent, she said, man, there's something unusual about him. They worked together for a week, and he said, hey, why don't you come home and have dinner with my wife and I? And we've got a little girl, and why don't you just meet my family? And so she did. And she writes, from her experience was that manly men, were hunters, fishers, athletes, steel mill workers. They were her. And she said, I didn't know what to do with this man, Brent Hansen. I was working for him. I was his assistant, but he played the flute. He played with puppets. And he was the president of the Student Librarian Association for the state of Illinois. He doesn't hunt. He's not a steel mill worker. She didn't know what to do with him. Is this a man? She said, I went to his house, and in 10 minutes, this is what I found. In the first 10 minutes, I saw what it meant to be a true man. This is her writing. It wasn't him running around fixing things or watching sports. It was the way his daughter and his wife looked at him. There was adoration and love, of course, but there was something infinitely more valuable. They looked at him with safety, not physical safety, but there was a security in his presence, a security that only a deep, faithful man can provide. And she said in the years that she worked for him, she found that to be true. Even when he was apart from his wife, she found him to be providing safety. His wife never had to wonder. That's the definition of masculinity. It's not being the head honcho. It's not being the boss. One commentator said the biblical role of a man is to be in control. Caught my attention, so I had to read their article. They said it's not in control of everyone else, it's in control of himself. That's the man. Not in control of everyone else. And somehow the devil has flipped that and said, hey, men, you need to be in control of it. That's a man in control of everyone else. No. What about, we got to get that picture off the screen as fast as I can. I know it's distracting. What about femininity? What about being feminine? What about being a woman? 3 things. These are just a collection from authors and commentators. What does it mean to be a biblical woman? Refuge, number 1. It means that you provide a sense of refuge, which is why some commentators say Jesus told Jerusalem, I wanted to be a mother hen to you and to gather you as chicks. I wanted to be your refuge. Which is why children will often run to the mother. There's a sense of refuge there. Number 2, relationship. Women bring relationship. They're responders, which is some biblical commentators say, hey, that's why women were created second, because they were created with this relationship response mechanism. And if they had been created first, they would have been like, whoa, wait a minute. Well, I got to have a relationship. I can't survive without relationship. And so they were created second to respond. So they had someone to respond to in relationship. And I remind myself, men and husbands, I'll remind you of this as well. In the context of your marriage, when your wife is speaking to you and kind of correcting you or fixing something in you, it's not because she wants to be the boss. It's because she wants relationship and she knows how to make it happen. And you don't. So she's just go with her, all right? Just go with her. She's just working on relationship. She's trying to fix it. And the third thing is that biblically, women bring beauty. I'm not talking about physical beauty, and Peter pointed that out. He's like, women, it's not just beautiful on the outside, it's what you bring inside. You make things beautiful. You turn a house into a home. You take a man and make him a husband. You make beautiful things. And women have that ability to seek beauty in others as well. And so again, husbands, let her do her job. She's got a knack for it. Let her make you beautiful in a manly sort of way. These aren't about who gets to be successful or who gets to be a leader of a company. That's not the biblical presentation of masculinity or femininity. We've made it so shallow as to debate those areas, but the Bible conversation of gender is at the level of the heart. Elizabeth Elliot, I told you she said this last week, but in her book, Let Me Be a Woman, she writes, in order to learn what it means to be a woman or to be a man, we must start with the one, capital O, who made her or him. Go back. As a husband, go back to God and say, God, how can I be that humble, providing, protecting husband? As a man, as a father, as a teenager boy, how can I be that masculine? How can I be that? You don't have to wait until you're married. No, in fact, don't wait until you're married. Be the man and the woman today. And even if you don't have a spouse, you still provide that for others. It's part of who you are, not just relegated to a marriage relationship. I believe God will guide us on this. He's the God that created us. And when they asked Jesus about this kind of subject, he said, God, the Creator, made it this way. So go back to the Creator. Let Him have His way in you. All right. My favorite story. I keep messing up my second favorite story, because my favorite story has to do with Melanie. That's true. It's been 7 years since I'm so sorry. I've deprived you of this incredible love story. This is one of the best love stories ever. I'm just going to put it in the calendar somehow. Okay, anyway. John Blanchard, I'm going to read it. John Blanchard stood up from the bench, straightened his army uniform, studied the crowd of people making their way through Grand Central Station, that's New York. He looked for the girl whose heart he knew, but whose face he didn't. The girl with the rose. Wow. His interest had begun 13 months in a Florida library. Taking a book off the shelf, he found himself intrigued, not with the words of the book, but with the notes penciled in the margin. The soft handwriting reflected a thoughtful soul and an insightful mind. In the front of the book, he discovered the previous owner's name, Miss Hollis Maynell. With time and effort, he located her address. She lived in New York City. He wrote her a letter introducing himself and inviting her to correspond. The next day, he was shipped overseas for service in World War II. During the next year and 1 month, the two grew to know each other through the mail. Each letter was a seed falling on their hearts. A romance was budding. Blanchard requested a photograph, but she refused. She felt that if he really cared, it wouldn't matter what she looked like. When the day finally came for him to return from Europe, they scheduled their first meeting, 7 p.m. at Grand Central Station in New York. You'll recognize me, she said in her letter. You'll recognize me by the red rose I'll be wearing on my lapel. So at 7 p.m., he was at the station looking for a girl whose heart he loved, but whose face he had never seen. Now, Mr. Blanchard tells the story in first person. He says, the young woman was coming toward me. Her figure was long and slim. Her blonde hair lay back in curls from her delicate ears. Her eyes were blue as flowers. Her lips and chin had a gentle firmness, and her pale green suit, she was like springtime come alive. I started to move toward her, entirely forgetting to notice she wasn't wearing a rose. As I moved, a small provocative smile curved on her lips. Going my way, soldier? She murmured. Almost uncontrollably, he said, I made one step closer to her, and then I saw Miss Hollis Maynell. She was standing behind, almost directly behind the girl, a woman well past 40. She had graying hair tucked under a worn hat. She was a little more than plump, her thick ankled feet thrust into low-heeled shoes. The girl in the green suit was walking quickly away. I felt as though I was split in two. So keen was my interest to follow her, and yet so deep was my longing for the woman whose spirit had truly been with mine and upheld my own. There she stood, her pale, plump face was gentle and sensible. Her gray eyes had a warm, kindly twinkle. I didn't hesitate anymore. My fingers gripped the small, worn book that was to identify me to her. It wouldn't be love, but it would be something precious, something maybe even more precious, a friendship. I squared my shoulders and saluted and held out the book to the woman, even though while I spoke, I choked back a little disappointment. I'm Lieutenant John Blanchard, and you must be Miss Maynell. I am so glad to meet you. Can I take you out for dinner? The woman's face broadened into a tolerant smile. I don't know what this is about, son, she answered, but the lady in the green suit who just went by begged me to wear this rose on my coat. And she said, if you were to ask me to dinner, that I should go, or that I should tell you she is waiting for you in the big restaurant across the street. I love this story. She says it was some kind of test. Tell me who you love, said the French poet. I will tell you who you are. Tell me what you expose yourself to, and I will tell you who you love. It's all a domino effect. There is, though, a certain strength and beauty and depth to this man being willing to commit, even though it wasn't attractive. You know what? That's what marriage is in sickness and in health, in riches, forsaking all others. I commit to you. Oh, sure, there's a lot of attractive time, but there's some time where you want to opt out. But the invitation, the biblical invitation, the invitation from the very the lips of Jesus is to make a commitment, loyal even when it's unattractive. Wait a minute, where have we seen that from? Where have we encountered someone who is willing to make a commitment to someone else even when it's unattractive, even when it's difficult? I'll tell you where we've seen it. We've seen it with Jesus. Romans chapter 5, let me put the words on the screen just before we sing our theme song. Romans chapter 5 and verse 8, but God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were still unattractive, we were still hurting him, we were still sinners, he died for us. You see this marriage covenant, this covenant between a man and a woman that God gave us in Eden, this loyalty, this fierce loyalty, this undying commitment, God just didn't tell us to do it. He did it himself. And in fact, he died instead of breaking his covenant with us. Verse 10, Romans chapter 5 and verse 10, for if when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his son, he died in place of breaking his covenant. So much more than having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. Beloved, this isn't just something God gave us. Hey, when you get hitched, stay hitched. Good on you. This is the marriage commitment between a man and a woman is the picture, the image, the likeness of the commitment that God has for you. Oh, you're unattractive at times. I'm unattractive at times. But God's committed to this. Some of you may be distracted. Some of you may realize that you need to go back to your family and make a commitment again. Maybe that's a conversation that you need to have. But some of us, yeah, even all of us, could make a recommitment to God today to say, Jesus, thank you. Thank you for loving me even when I was unattractive. I want to love you. I want to love you with all of my heart. I want to have that fierce loyalty, that undying commitment. I want to be radical. I don't always feel it, but I want it today. Come on, beloved. Let's do it. If there's any way we can be a part of that with you, there's a connect card in the pew in front of you. You can write out that connect card. You put it, you say, I need to talk about a commitment with my family. I need to talk about how to be a man or how to be a woman in today's culture. I need to talk about my marriage. I need to talk about my commitment with God. You fill out that connect card. Now, you don't have a pen? Of course you don't. This is 2022. Well, you take out your cell phone, 970-279-3432. You can text that number or use the QR code. And you can just say, I need to make a recommitment with Jesus. We have a baptismal Sabbath coming up in May. Actually, 2 Sabbaths in a row that we're going to have baptisms. You can be a part of that. Just fill out the connect card or text the connect number. We'll follow up with you.
Oh church, arise and put your armor on. Hear the call of Christ our captain. For now the weak can say that they are strong in the strength that God has given. With shield of faith and belt of truth, we'll stand the devil's levels lies. An army born, whose battle cry is love, reaching out to those in darkness. Our call to war, to love the captive soul, but to rage against the captor. With the sword that makes the wounded whole, we will fight with faith and valor. When faced with trials on every side, we know the outcome is secure, and Christ will have the prize for which He died, an inheritance of nations. Arise, shine, for your light has come. Arise, shine, for the risen sun. Lift your eyes, we are His radiant bride. Arise, O church, arise. Please stand up. Come see the cross where love and mercy meet, as the Son of God is stricken. Then see His foes lie crushed beneath His feet, for the conqueror has risen. And as the stone is rolled away, and Christ emerges from the grave, this victory march continues till the day every eye and heart shall see end. So Spirit come, who strengthen every stride, give grace for every hurdle, that we may run with faith to win the prize of a servant good and faithful. And saints of old still light the way, retelling triumphs of His grace. Hear the call and hunger for the day when Christ will stand in glory. Arise, shine, for your light has come. Arise, shine, for the risen sun. Lift your eyes, we are His radiant bride. Arise, O church, arise, O church, arise.
And the Lord bless you, and the Lord keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face toward each of you and bring you peace. And until we meet again in worship, amen.